Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. We are super excited to have LaVonna on BAM today. LaVonna and I met, it was a couple months ago at a conference. It was a local conference here in Colorado. And I have to say, LaVonna, like one of the things that really stood out to me is that you had this keynote energy of a huge conference. And it was a small local conference. The people that put it on, I think I even told them, like, I don't know how you found these speakers, but they are amazing. I've been to big conferences that have not been as polished as this one. So anyway, so we met at a conference, and when you were speaking, what you don't know about me is I never cry, like very, very rarely. And I got so teary that day. And I went up and talked to you after the session, and I had completely started crying, which is, again, not me at all. So it just really struck a chord. And I was like, please be on our podcast. So here you are. So I'm so excited to have you here today. So stay tuned, buckle up, and here we go.
Yay. Awesome. Thank you for all of that. That was lovely. Thank you. That's amazing.
We are so excited to have you on the show, and we want to dive in. So, LaVonna, you are all the things, and we want to hear about them: executive coach, author, mom. Inspiration to all. I'm really excited to learn about your journey, how it all started. It sounds like you've always kind of been an educator, and the spark of learning people and really doing your due diligence to understand the human thought process and all the things. So why don't you kick it off and kind of tell us how it all started?
Yeah. Well, that you did dig. You did find some goodies there. Well done.
All the goods.
Yeah. I was a teacher for 10 years and I really thought I would stay there, but I became a single mom at one point. And so I knew that in order to make more money, I needed to go into administration. So that was the complete path I was on, was to go into administration. And I had a chance to step out and I did sales for a university, was quickly promoted to business development manager of the Southeast. And I liked it. I liked it when I was in that teaching, that education part that you talked about, coaching and in the field with them. But the moment I was back to how many calls did you make? How many leads did you get? It just drained me.
Yeah.
So I had a headhunter call me one day, and that led to me working for a company that a month and a half into it, they laid off all of marketing. And like 2 months after that, I was laid off. They don't exist anymore. And then I worked for another company that was highly toxic. I was screamed at, cussed out, and then hugged in the next breath and saying, "We're
Yeah.
so blessed to have you." So it was all of that after like 4 months of being treated that way with them, I found out I was the eighth person in 10 months at my position. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm done. But that gave me the courage to jump. It gave me the courage to say, you know what, if they can run a company and treat people that way, I can run a company and treat people right. And I didn't know what that meant, except here we go. And my husband, I just remember, super supportive man. He did look at me and go, you need to make this work. So that was back in 2008. And, here we are. It's shuffled and shifted and changed and all the things. It's part of the journey.
It's so interesting, too, what you said about if they can run a company like this, I know I can. And I run into that all the time being HR for small businesses. It's like, if they can do it, we can do it. And the other thing that struck me too is the toxic workplace. This is going to sound very weird, but if you are, consistently that the person's going to be shitty, right? That they're going to treat you horribly. It's actually easier than if they treat you shitty and then they hug you in the next breath, which is so bizarre, but it can suck you in, right?
Yeah. It's an emotional journey you go on. Yeah.
So that was the tipping point for you, right, LaVonna? You realize, if I'm going to work this hard for a shitty company, I can work this hard for myself and really show people how to treat others, right? Really that basic, philosophy. And so was it hard? I mean, had you ever had any kind of entrepreneurial thoughts before, or was it just like, I'm just going to jump off and do it?
I had zero to that point. I always thought, when you're trained like an educator, you just serve and you do it for others, and not that changes or anything necessarily, but I always thought I would just work for somebody else. And a crazy thought I had, this literally was last Friday. I realized, I said to my husband, I said, holy cow, had I stayed in education, I would be retiring this year.
Yeah. Isn't that nuts? Because of
Yes.
well, we call it para, but like the pension that you get.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And now no, far from it, which is okay. I'm not
Yes.
ready to retire. I don't want to retire, but it's just a weird thought. But yeah, it's interesting that, I definitely did not think about entrepreneurship, but I love it. Like, I love it.
Your business development stint had to have helped you significantly, because I find that so many people that I talk to, me included, that's one of the biggest challenges. The second I think of it as sales, I struggle. But if I think of it as relationship building and, talking to people, figuring out what their pain points are, it's a whole different feeling.
Yep. I agree. I agree. And it definitely set me up. I never thought I would do sales because it was all like snake oil and oily to me.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
experience, though, understanding that if you approach it from relationships and doing what's best for people and caring about them, and it's not the high pressure sales, then
Hmm.
like that's more my style and I love it. But yeah, no, in hindsight, I can see all the ducks lining up
Yes.
to where I am today.
That's why we love this so much because every guest we've talked to, we see that link. When you're young, you don't have the perspective. When you're older, you can see how everything connected.
Right. And I think the relationship building makes so much sense because when you think of sales versus relationship, the moment you hear sales, it's exhausting. The moment you hear build relationships, you get excited. Right. And I think that's just for doing what you do and going and speaking, it energizes your soul to go out there and just share, right? And get people excited, like Jenny or whoever else is in the audience and being like, yeah, you can do this. You can make these changes that are going to empower you to be better at what you do and just have a better, sense of yourself. And
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. I know.
What grade did you teach?
I did mostly middle school, but I also so I taught
Okay.
7th and 8th grade a lot, but I also well, and 6th grade was part of that, and then 2nd and 5th.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I only did 2nd 1 year because I had to find a job, and I had 1 day to find a job, and I was offered 2nd. It's that's coming from 7th and 8th grade, so it was, like, literally culture shock.
I bet. I bet.
I was
I
like,
love
"What do you
it.
mean you don't know how to tie your shoe?"
Yeah.
"Okay, okay, this is where we are."
Yeah. Exactly.
Snot running down the face, and sweetheart, there's a tissue right there. Like,
Hey,
Yes.
so different,
yeah,
Yes.
right?
I
A
love
whole
them. I
different.
love them, but it was
Yeah.
definitely an adjustment.
So
Absolutely.
when you think of, when you took the leap and you went into entrepreneurship, were there, let's hear a little bit about those moments of like, oh shit, right? As we know, right? It's all glamorous for a moment and then it's
I don't know what you're
all like,
talking about, Lori.
Yeah.
and there's the freak out moments like your husband saying, you need to make this work. And you're like, I
Yeah.
got this. And then you're like, oh, well,
Yeah.
did you have some of those situations?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. At first, I was training for other people, and I would learn their product or learn what they had. So, for example, one of them was a publisher who I was training for them on other people's product for education, and they came to me and said, "We want you to write a book." And I was like, "Oh heck no! I have no desire to write a book." And here we are, 8 books later. We've got them out, but all for education. But they're like, "You're already teaching it, like you're already doing it," and so it's interesting, like, I always thought I would be in education, I like, from that perspective and really supporting teachers, it was based on, like, how does the brain learn and really engaging students in the classroom, and then several things happened that really shifted and changed, and it's anywhere from, budgets, cuts, and education to, I don't wanna go into politics, but I will say that a drastic change in the past couple of years has put me under that umbrella. So it's been more difficult. Like it's actually, where in certain states you can't teach like a growth mindset of I can't do this yet. Like it's not allowed in the public education system. So I had a
Wow.
lot of contracts that were canceled and I could do nothing about them because it's considered illegal at this point. So it's fascinating to me, the journey, but I always believe that, there are reasons and maybe this is also a way that's aligning me in a different position.
Hmm.
I feel like I'm still on that journey a little bit because it's what I do does not fit an industry. I can speak in front of and I have in front of healthcare clinicians and you know like insurance companies and nonprofits and financial advisors and it doesn't matter because it's a human message.
Yeah.
And so I realized lately that I've always been like we did women in leadership for a while and I didn't feel good about it because yes, as much as my heart is for women, I also
Hmm.
was like, but we're excluding those that need this message too, not just women.
Yeah.
So it's been a little bit of a journey. It definitely has, and lots of ups and downs. And I will say I've never been ready or wanting to throw in the towel because I
Yeah.
love what I do, and just the power of the messages and the stories that I have of life changing that will choke me up. That's the
And
power to
choked
keep
me up.
going. But yeah,
So you got
it's the
Jenny
power
to
to keep
cry.
going.
I'm
But
wondering what you were speaking about.
You were touching on just, it was when you were talking about the bracelet. You talked
mm,
about the fireflies. So actually, will you tell the story about the fireflies? I love it so much, and I'm sure you'll tell it better.
no, it's really good. Yeah. So there was some research that was done by accident. So there was a Professor Hugh Smith that was deep in the forest of Southwest Asia, and he saw a tree light up, and he thought it had been struck by lightning. And so he's just studying and watching, and he sees it happen again. And this time it's more trees. And so he thought, wow, like you don't typically see lightning strike in the same place twice, but I just did. And so he got closer, which I do question that. Like, it's lightning.
I
Why
know.
would, right? Like, it
And let
makes
me
no
guess.
sense. But whatever.
Yeah.
He did. He did. And what he
Yeah.
discovered is that the trees are full of fireflies. And so he started doing research on fireflies, and he learned that when fireflies light up on their own, that they have a 3% chance of survival. But when they synchronize their lights together, they have an 82% chance of survival. So they jump significantly from 3 to 82%. And when they light up and synchronize their lights like this, they actually can be seen for miles, which attracts more fireflies. So we have adopted the firefly, it's Flicker the Firefly, as our mascot because the way that I view this is, my company's called Ignite Your Shine, and Shine is an acronym. It's a framework that we use. But if you think about just how do you shine, right? Like if one of you is bringing your own gifts, skills, talents, strengths, and the same thing with everybody else. So we do light up in our own, and we need that. However, when we can come together and we synchronize and we support each other and we understand the value of what I bring and what everybody else brings and how we utilize that to get what we actually want with our results, whether it's a nonprofit company, entrepreneur, whatever it may be, then when we do that, like we're actually unstoppable at that point. So, and I just thought, when we shine, we call it the shine effect. Like when
Mhm.
you learn to shine, and not that you do it every moment, I sure as heck don't. But when you shine, you invite others to shine. Like that just carries out. And so there's such
Yeah.
beauty in it. So yeah, it's our mascot.
Yeah, and I think that it had been my business partner was out of town and then she's out of town. Going back to we all bring our own strengths, right? She's so strong in certain areas and I can do them, but they're hard for me. Really, like it doesn't come easy. And it had been a week of just overwhelm and I felt alone and I felt vulnerable and to your point, I've never felt like I want to hang up the towel, but I have felt like, what am I doing to myself? And so there are those weeks where and because I wasn't focused on the things that do come naturally and that I'm naturally strong in, I felt like a failure. I just felt like I wasn't doing justice to the business. So it was all of those things that I was carrying walking in that morning. And then when you started talking about that, I was just like, it was just this moment of like, oh my God, I can exhale. And I think that the spirit of the day, it was all women, right? The spirit of the day was like we can support each other in this because we all have these moments. And so I felt maybe like I was one of the many fireflies in that room where we were all coming together to support each other and shine. And I think that was just, I needed that at that moment. So thank you.
My gosh, no, I'm glad you were there.
It's funny you say
Yeah.
that because just when you're saying all that, I'm actually thinking of teams too, like sports teams and
Yeah.
how athletes and, all the, championship games that are happening. I live in a house of all boys. So, right, like there's lots of NBA
The D
finals
Senate, Davis
happening.
Cup, World Cup.
Right.
Yeah.
World Cup, like all the things, but you take that same thought process and everybody's bringing their skills. Everybody is coming together and it
Hmm.
really is a team and it's the coaches and it's, you know, all the people that bring their amazingness to really make the best team. And so I think it's so amazing that you can apply that to everything, really.
Yes.
Tell us more about your business. You know that thing, it's like how it started, how it's going. Like how did it start? How's it going? What was the evolution like? How's it changed over the years? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so it has changed from, again, it was mostly education, and that's where I really thought I would be. And I really love education. Originally, Shine was meant to help students have confidence, right? So that there wasn't like reduction of bullying. And I saw that in my own classrooms the moment I shifted to what each person brings. We're not great at everything, but who's great at this and who's good at this and who does that. And it just completely shifted it. And so it was meant for that. And I also, when we talk about things like suicides, typically do not happen with people who feel good about themselves. So, I mean, there can be chemical imbalance and that's different. But for the most part, and I thought, and we can, like school shootings are not, again, happening from
Yeah.
students who feel good about themselves. And so I thought we could build up the confidence and take shine from that lens, but then also support students career wise. We're all getting this box in education of reading, writing, math, and science, and we're
Yeah.
so much more than that. And so I was like, well, what if we could get students identified, like, what am I good at and what am I passionate about, and put that together to understand what could possibly be career paths. So, like with my daughter, for example, she looked at multiple avenues at one point, like interior design or an architect. She talked about real estate. She loves supercars. And when you ask her why she loves them, she loves the design of them. And so when we
Mhm.
looked to find her shine spot, which is a technique that we use, I was trying to help her figure out like her career
Yeah.
and realize for her, it's about aesthetic appeal and design. And she's now in real estate. And so for her, like it is like the layouts, the way things are looking, how can the
Mhm.
house be different? What do you want customizations to make it look better? So I see that. And so like for us, like for me, I don't view a career for people as it has to be the 30 years that we used to think. And I think we're moving away from that for sure. But don't beat yourself up over it if you want to change jobs because one, there's new strengths that you unveil and then passions can come and go because you get tired
Mhm.
of them or you find new ones or love them or you amp it up. But knowing all of that, it is that journey and how do we make that journey? So for me, it's been starting with, students and education and helping teachers to support the students and parents to support to we more recently just really started looking at, women in leadership. And then we said, okay, what
Yeah.
about just leadership? And now there's just this unsettling with me that something is off. And so we are literally in the middle of a transition right now. And it's
Yeah.
going to be serving individuals. Yes, still doing B2B and businesses, but really going more to the individuals because of the number of individuals I've had in an audience, like you talked about,
Yeah.
Vinny, like tearing up. But I've even had, a cowboy that I really thought he came in his cowboy boots and his cowboy hat and a big
Yeah.
buckle. And he walked up to me at the end and I immediately had bias. I will admit it. And
Yeah.
I was like, he is going to sit here and tell me, like,
Yeah.
okay, that is just so soft. They need to toughen up. And even though I call them necessary skills instead of soft skills, he came up
Yes.
and he just started talking to me about his mom. And I do share a personal story in my keynotes. And I started talking about his mom. And he's like, you got me to think about our relationship in a very different way. And I'm going to reach out to her. And he had tears in his eyes, walked away, came back, started showing me pictures of him and his mom. And he's like, I'm calling her and I'm going to repair this relationship and tears in his eyes again. So now I'm tearing up.
Yeah.
So I realized that every time an organization has me speak and nothing more comes from it, I'm not serving people at the level that we can. And so
Mhm.
we will still do B2B, but we're going to shift to B2C so
So
the
more
individual have it.
one-on-one coaching, consulting, is that kind of
No, I would I love that idea and I've played with that idea, but my time is limited, and
Mhm.
so
Yep. Yep.
it limits the
Totally.
number. So I created a companion that was meant more so for leadership. However, it was meant for anyone in an organization to do because we don't define leadership as a title. We look at it as in your role, whatever job you have, you are a leader in that role because either you do the job or you don't. You have ownership, you have responsibility, accountability. And so for us, it's not the title. And so I think it may have to shift just a little bit, but there are activities for each letter, and we're going to have the Shine Studio. And so that anyone can come in cohorts, and we're going to approach it that way and go through different activities for segmented time. And then they can roll into another cohort if they want and keep going. But then the dream eventually will be to have in person events with these people too.
Love it. Well, so speaking of that, will you tell us what SHINE means and take us through? I know it's an acronym. Will you take us through it?
Yeah, yeah, I'd be glad to. So, shine, the letter S is self. And so we focus on what are your strengths, gifts, skills, and talents, which I mentioned earlier. So you can just basically think of it as what am I good at, right? What are the people
Mhm.
that I work with? What are they good at? My family, what are they good at? So this applies as you'll see very quickly. It's human. This has nothing to do with like a position or anything like that. So self, what am I good at? What am I bringing to the table? Because we're so good at looking what we're not good at doing. And Gallup research says that a strength of yours will remain a strength, but your weaknesses will never get to that level. So
Yeah.
work on this, improve it. Yes, but this is where it's at. H then and shine is heart and it's about passion. So I mentioned that briefly earlier because you have to enjoy what you do or love what you do, have an interest in what you do. And if you don't, there's a mismatch. Like if you're good at
Mhm.
something and you're missing the passion, you burn out. If you have a passion for something, but you're not good at it, well, that might be more like a hobby, right?
Yeah.
Not that you can't improve and do it, but you might want to just think about that. I is inspire and shine because life is still going to throw curveballs. And so how do we
Mhm.
stay inspired? And I believe we have the responsibility of inspiring others too. So how do we inspire? So it's both. N is navigate, meaning what do you do with everything that I was just talking about? It's you putting it into action, your story, your journey. It's what you want out of life. How do you want things to go? So again, this can be personally for how you want. Your family can look at it from that point of view, but it also can be professionally, from you and your role and career to the entire organization. So if this is what we want to achieve, how do we utilize everything that was just mentioned with S, H, and I? Because I will give a little caveat because when it comes to inspiration, the biggest mistakes I see individuals and organizations make is their focus is on inspiring other people, but it's based on how they are inspired. So like
Yeah.
Jenny and Lori, you each are inspired differently than I am. Like for me, it might
Mhm.
be quotes where it might be a music for somebody else. And for someone else, it might be gifts, might be affirmation publicly, some quiet. Like We have to understand that. So N for
Yeah.
navigate is we are taking everything that we know about each other and the actual goals and putting everything into action. So that E in shine is exceptional because you are becoming the exceptional person you were meant to be, not anybody else who you were meant to
Yeah.
be.
I love that. And how long did it take you to come up with that like that whole philosophy? Because I mean, that's a lot, right? Like, because I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to dial it all in and make it so great and have such a wonderful, acronym. And I mean, did it take a while to really, dive into each of those?
The what shine was going to represent as far as each letter came
Hmm.
very, very quickly. It didn't at first when I was going after the word smart in education.
Yeah.
I had a challenging time in education. I am not book smart, but I have a lot of other gifts that I do bring to the table, but they're not recognized in the school system, which now you can begin to understand why it was so dear to me to get
Yeah.
shine in schools because I wanted every student of mine to know that you are smart. The question is how, and that's our responsibility. Well, those children grow into adults, and we carry that with us into every workplace, right? So the word smart though was I was having a really hard time with, and so then I thought, okay, it's more of like, okay, if we don't go with smart, it's how somebody and the word shine popped in my head. And
Yeah.
I knew every
No.
single letter. What took me a while is I didn't understand how many disciplines and like brain sciences and wellness and emotional intelligence and all of it that got pulled in until about probably about a year. I had a psychologist that I know, and she did cognitive interviewing with me and another type of interviewing. And she started I word vomited. She asked me all
Yeah.
kinds of questions about each letter and shine overall. And it pulled things out of me that I didn't even realize. And she's like, I don't know that you understand how research based this is. She's like, LaVonna, this is heavily but what you've done is taken like what somebody will do over here with one company or
Yeah.
over here with another company. Not that what I do is similar to them, but I've pulled it together into one
Hmm.
component instead of it being go over
Separate.
here to learn this and go over there to learn that. It's all embedded. I was like, okay, well, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah,
Didn't know, but yes, it's awesome.
and it's to your point of like all the things that led you down this path, like the schooling and your own experience with schooling. And I remember you spoke about that, just being not a great student. I wasn't a great student either. And now watching my kids navigate, and seeing the things that they're dealing with. And I find that being in HR, the skills that we have, we call them human skills. So, again, not soft skills. It's like these are the things that we deal with most of the time when it's performance related behavior. It's not the technical skills, it's the behavioral skills or the human skills. And it's a lot harder to learn those things. And so you find that the things that are rewarded in school and like traditional education are not the things that are going to make you successful in the workplace. So there's a pretty big gap there. So I love that you're pulling all of that together. I think that it's so incredibly valuable.
Thank you. Lori, did
Yeah, I actually enjoyed school. I wasn't like a typical bookworm,
Yeah.
acing the test. I was always had to study hard because I just was not a good test taker, but
Mhm.
I excelled at other areas. I felt like I was a good writer and all the things, but when it really dialed into like just like get like math, big struggle bus for me. I got a degree in
Yep.
journalism in college because I was like, what can I do that involves the least amount of math? And back then I was like,
Mine was communication for
right,
a
well,
very
right.
similar
I was like,
reason.
I could go psychology, which I kind of lean towards, but I really love to write. So yeah, I like to think I was an okay student, and I liked school,
Yeah.
and I played a lot of sports. So let's talk about fun. Let's jump in. All this is fun, but how do you disconnect and give yourself a break? What are some activities, or travel, or whatever it might be, where you can step outside of your work persona and really kind of fill your cup in a different way?
that's really become critically important to me. I found myself starting to burn out, even though I am driven by the adrenaline of what I do because I love it so much. But one point, I was speaking so heavily on the road, I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and I'd be trembling in bed because I was at exhaustion, but right back up next day firing it, because again, it's
Yep.
the energy, the passion, the love for it, but it also can come at a cost, and then I have a hard work ethic. I enjoy working. My husband 2 years ago had a heat stroke, and it did prompt us to move from Florida to Colorado, so because of that, but it was that was a scare. We've also had several other scares with him where he spent 43 days in and out of a hospital in 1 year due to a bad surgery it was a surgery that went wrong, and so it's those moments that remind me, and then, my daughter is just so valuable to me and important to me, and making sure that I have quality time with her and maximizing that even though I've now moved away from her.
Mhm.
That was a very hard thing to do. So what was the question again? I totally lost
Sorry,
you.
no, you're on the right path. Yeah, just
Okay.
how do you disconnect, right? Like, and you're
Yes.
touching base on all of those things, right? Like,
Yes.
it's family, it's
Yeah.
transitioning your like you said, you moved from Florida to Colorado. And I want to talk more about that because Florida is definitely way different than Colorado. I am born
Yeah.
and raised Jenny too, native of
Yeah.
Colorado. So, and I've gone to Florida for vacation, but it's very different. It's very flat. Yes, there's
Yes.
water, but you come
Yes.
here and we have these beautiful mountains and all the things. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, and you said it was hard to leave your daughter. I assume she's still in Florida.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes,
let's
it is.
talk about what you said your push was a little bit. Obviously, your husband, the heat in Florida was becoming too much. What brought you to Colorado specifically, and how did you make that choice?
Yeah, so we were looking at Montana, and then we were looking at Missoula because we had been there once, went back the next
Yeah.
summer, loved it again, and ironically, he had the heat stroke in Montana. It was 90-some degrees
Really?
that day. Yeah, and we went on a run. Well, he went on a run, I went on a walk, which that's one of the things, by the way, how do I take care of me is I schedule literally my walks in. So like this morning, there's somebody I've been
Yeah.
trying to get in touch with, and she's been trying to get, we've been trying to match our schedules. And I was like, hey, I walk in the mornings. I schedule it on my calendar. Is there any chance you just want to do a walk and talk separately, but walk and talk? And sure enough, this morning we spent almost an hour on the phone. Well, I walked, she
Yeah.
walked, and we had this talk. But I do have to schedule everything. And I also, by the way, I have one rule if this helps any listener. So that my rule is that I can, when I schedule my walk, I can only move it one time. So that's the
Oh, I love
rule
that.
that
Yeah.
because it's very easy to move it, and get rid of it, right? So yeah, so the goal was Missoula, but he was on a run, I was on a walk. It was 90-some degrees that day, and on the bike, like the trail that they had, there are fountains along the way, but they all were not working that day. And so that's where everything happened. But we still loved Missoula. So we're like, okay,
Yeah.
3 days before leaving for Missoula to go look for a place to live, even though we heard the winters were brutal, we're like, we
Yeah.
could try for a year. I looked at him though, and I said, it makes no sense for me to move to Missoula. And he said, why? And I said, because I'm always flying everywhere else. And I said, so that's over $1,000 round trip in and out. It's also the next closest bigger one is Bozeman. That's over 3 hours away. That again, as much as I travel, makes no sense. And so he's like, then where? And I said, well, how come we haven't looked at like Denver or Boulder? He's like, I don't know. He's like, I love it there. And I told him, I said, I'm always flying everywhere else and going to their communities. I want to support my own community. And I could do it with Missoula and Bozeman, but it's also very limited.
Yeah.
So sure enough, we canceled everything 3 days before for Missoula, booked instead to come here to Colorado. And my husband like watched every YouTube video, I think, under the sun by every realtor in the area. And he's like, look at this little town. And I was like, I love it. Let's do it. So we flew out and checked it out. And here we are,
I
And you've
love
been
it.
here how long? A year, you said?
8 months.
Oh, 8 months. Okay, not even a
Yeah.
year. Wow. All right.
No, no, I
You
love,
lucked out
love.
because we had a mild winter. I mean,
I
honestly,
know.
it's
I know.
nothing like Montana ever. Like, it's not usually bad, but we did have a very mild winter, so you lucked out. They eased
Yes,
you in.
we did.
Yeah.
But like Jenny said, it's never that bad. And we kind of like to tell
Right.
people it is. So that way, like, we love the good people that move here, but there's a lot of
Yeah,
extra
yeah.
people that move here,
It's
but we
funny
want
you
to
say
keep
that
the
because
good
I
people.
keep saying nobody else needs to move here. We
Right.
made it. No one else
I
needs to come.
I know. The gates are closed. I know.
Yes.
I do have to ask you, okay, so we talked about this a little bit, but so the travel, you do a ton of travel, international travel, and there's a story that you told me the story last time we spoke, and I really want you to talk about it because it's really impacted me. But you went to Singapore, so when we spoke, you had just gotten back from Asia, and you had an experience there that I'd love for you to share if you're okay with that.
Of course. Yes. No. I'm a pretty open book, and if there's something I don't like to talk
Yeah,
about, I've filtered out on my own.
yeah,
I've learned that we all go through things, and so
yeah.
if we think we're alone, it just stinks. So yeah. So I was asked to speak in Singapore, and so I did a master class one day, a master class the second, and then two keynotes the third day. So we ended up being there for 10 days because we flew in before, got adjusted, and all that. My husband came with me, and while I was there, I noticed how like everybody just first of all they were friendly, but then also there was this like safety factor. And I'd heard that Singapore is pretty safe, but I didn't know to the level of that it was. But basically, you as a woman can walk entirely on your own. You will not be affected in any way. What I didn't realize is how much my guard was actually up as a woman. And we just naturally do this because living in the States, you just have to be aware of things. And I actually started to realize I could let this guard down. And I had heard, and I ended up meeting a woman who confirmed this, but she sometimes can't sleep, for example. And she'll go out at 3, 4 a.m. to the park, put her bag down. It's dark out, go for a 5-mile run, come back. Everything will be there. No one has said or touched her in any way, looked at her. As a matter of fact, there's a law in Singapore that you cannot stare too long at a woman.
Really?
So, yeah, yeah. So I can't remember what it's called, like oogling. I don't remember what it's called, but there's something. Yes, a Singaporean was telling me about this, and basically every so many feet, there's a pole with 4 CCTV cameras on it,
Yeah.
and so it's constantly monitoring. Like they while we were there, somebody had been caught keying somebody else's car, and they got 7 canings because they still cane people. So yeah, it's very, very strict, but it's also extremely safe. Like I've choked
Yeah.
up at least 3 times walking, realizing that I didn't have to worry. I didn't have to look at the bushes. I didn't have to look between cars. And,
Yep.
it was, and you don't realize you're just trained to do it. And so you don't have to do it that you realize, holy cow, this is nuts.
It's crazy. And,
Yeah.
I will say I've been to Japan multiple times and it's very, very similar, very safe. The first time I went, I remember I was being hesitant to go down alleys. I mean, I was with my husband and such, but he's like, we're fine. We're in Tokyo. And it took
Yeah.
me a while. And then I was like, it's like this sense, like it's just amazing. It's this freedom and everybody's very respectful, kind, and just no worries.
Yes. We actually went from Singapore to Bali to Japan.
So,
So the
You did,
same,
yeah.
yeah. Oh,
You said something about there was a study about eye movement, men and
yeah.
women. Do you remember that?
And I wish I could remember the exact study and everything, but I just remember reading it one day and I remember thinking I should say this. But it was they had men go on a walk and women go on a walk and they tracked eye movements. And men would stay more parallel to the path and occasionally look off, but women's eyes were constantly darting back and forth because they were checking trees, bushes, everything. And it
Mhm.
was like something insane, like 80% more eye movement than it was for men.
Is just yeah, you don't to your point, you just don't realize how much you're carrying. And I remember my business partner went to Japan and she said, "I you can leave your bathroom or your bag and go to the bathroom and know it's you're going to come back." Like just simple things like that. You know? Like that sounds amazing. I
I
might
know.
trade a little bit of privacy for that,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
right.
know?
No, I will tell you one real quick funny moment was they were sitting at a restaurant and I look over and there's the CCTV cameras and then
Yeah.
just over was another pool and it said no smoking up to 10,000. I can't remember what the whatever the money is over there,
Yeah, yeah.
but that $10,000 fine basically. And a guy underneath it was smoking. I was
You're
like,
kidding me.
no, I literally took a
Oh,
picture. I did because I was like, this is almost unbelievable.
Oh my God.
he's like,
Yeah.
I got money to burn.
Well, that's
I'm
what I was
okay with
wondering. I was
it.
like, did you not see the massive, huge sign? Or you don't care? I don't know.
I know we were talking about this earlier, but I wanted to jump back to it. When you moved from Florida to Colorado, the relationship with your daughter, because I know she still stayed there, and I was
Yes.
just curious. I wanted to touch base on how that was hard, and kind of the thought process of doing that.
Yeah, yeah. So when we looked at moving, I kept thinking moving away from my daughter, but what my language in my head was, I can't believe I'm leaving my daughter.
Yeah.
And I caught myself at one point, and I'm like, you're not leaving her. You are still here for her, but you are
Yeah.
moving away from her. And that was honestly the hardest part of the decision. I also lived near my aunt and uncle. My uncle was, in really some tough shape and declining rapidly, and I'm very close to them. And,
Mhm.
when we did move, he was placed under hospice and he has passed since. But I felt this guilt like, I'm supposed to be here for family. I'm supposed to be here with my daughter. My daughter's the one that's supposed to move away, not me.
Mhm.
And I just had so much guilt about it. And I remember one time we were standing in the store and she choked up and she said, Mom, are you really moving? And I said, I am. And, I choked up too. And we had our moment together. But I said to her, and I'm probably gonna get emotional still, but I said, I have said to you ever since you were 18 at least on up that I never want you to live your life for me, right? Like,
Mhm.
I want you to live your life for you. So if you've mentioned that you don't know that you will stay in Florida. And so I never want you to stay in Florida for me. So I guess the way that I'm going to look at this is that I'm modeling for you that I mean it. You need to go live
I
your
love
life
that.
and do what you need to do. And I will do the same. And we will always stay connected and find ways to be together. So yeah. I would tell you, we
I love
talk more
that.
on the phone than we ever have. I lived 45 minutes from her. I actually did the math. This is how crazy I was because I was so worried about it. I went back
Yeah.
in the calendar because I always put us in, and she's 45 minutes from me, but she's very busy real estate life. I am, often on the road. So getting our calendars, I
Mhm.
looked, okay, outside of like Christmas and Thanksgiving. So let's just go ahead and add those in. It was a total of 10 times. Well, I
That
have
you
been
saw
going
each
back
other?
that we saw each other. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
10. So, okay, so it's not that crazy. It's not like I saw her,
Yeah.
every week. It was 52 times, for example,
Right.
anything like that.
Yes.
So I felt better about the math on that. And so far, I have seen her every month since I've moved. And I will continue through until August because I'm going there in a couple weeks, next week, actually. She'll be coming here for July, go there in August.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost more intentional time
Yeah.
together, right? I mean, not that it wasn't before, but now it's really like the time you are together,
Carved out.
you're
Yeah.
really focused on being with one another because, when you're just 45 minutes, it's like anything. You're like, you can stop by whenever, but, although it doesn't happen.
Right. That's the reality of it. That's what I realized is,
Yeah.
and others who have been like are living different states or whatever than their children, they have told me the same thing. They said we're actually
Yeah.
closer. Like we actually have more conversations and such. So I was like, okay, and help me feel better, but still gonna have
Well, it
little
gives
mom
her
guilt.
her own identity too. I find both my girls live elsewhere and they have built their own life and then they can bring their whole self into the relationship.
Yeah.
It's cool to see. It's not easy, but we even talked about like, should we sell our house? And I was like, well, the kids won't have anywhere to come back to. And I'm like, they've been there one time in the last year. That's what we're going to make a life decision based on one visit a year. But the
That's what
data
exactly.
is so helpful. You said you have two bonus kids too. Tell us
Yeah.
about where they
Yes.
are.
Yeah. So my bonus son is a medical doctor. He's in South Florida. And I just got back last night from us being there because they're expecting a baby. So we had the baby
Yay.
shower. Yeah, it's going to be a girl. And then I have a bonus daughter. She is in Texas at Texas Tech getting her PhD in animal sciences and environmental sciences and just dynamos. They're both, yeah, it's so fun to watch when three of them get together. So, the three children all together, they're hilarious because they just like
Yeah.
then they feed off each other and they make jokes and it's so fun.
LaVonna, you've done a lot of amazing things, and I want to hear specifically what you're most proud of. It's a big question, right? Because you're proud of a lot of things. What would you be most proud of at this point in your life?
Are we talking professionally, personally, anything?
Whatever you want.
Yep.
All right. This was a story I really, really wanted to share on this podcast. So,
Good.
and again,
Okay.
I might choke up just so you know. The tears are already coming into my eyes, but
Yeah.
because I feel like every mom, parent needs to hear this too. But, it was a really hard decision for me to not only own my own company, but then to travel on top of it being a mom. And so Maddie was about, oh gosh, let's see, I started in 2008. So she would have been 8 years old when all of this started. And it ramped up to where I was traveling more and more and more. And, it was helpful. I would say not that divorce is ever helpful, but it was helpful from the point that we had 50-50 custody. And he
Yeah.
and I have a wonderful relationship. So we were able to, like, whenever I'm gone, he had her, and then I would just have her like when I was home. And so it really ended up being about 50-50, even though I was traveling so heavily. But I remember one time Maddie was 16, and I said to her, Maddie, come sit on the couch with me. I just want to ask you something. And I said, I've been traveling a lot, and I know
Mhm.
that can't be easy. And I said, so if I'm traveling too much, I want you to tell me, like, am I? How are you with comfort level of me traveling? And she goes, Mom, I'm totally fine. Why? And I said, well, I just want to make sure. I really do. And I said, and sometimes people say to me, how do you travel? You're a mom. And she went, that is just rude. And I said, well, I think some people are legitimately curious because it's not
Yeah.
common for the woman, the mom, to travel. And I said, but I also I do think there's a little bit of a guilt thing. And I said, but it's not meant to be my guilt. I think it's their guilt, but I will adopt the guilt right now,
Mhm.
naturally, because I already have it. And so, but I said to her, I was like, no, I think, sometimes they're just curious, et cetera. And so she said, she just got quiet and she looked at me, 16 years old. And she goes, would they ask you that if you were a man?
Yeah. I was thinking
And
the
my
same
mouth
thing.
dropped. And I said, no. And she goes, would they ask it if you were in the military? And I said, well, that's very different. And she goes, you serve people, they serve people. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then then she said to me, I want you to know you all have always done quality over quantity. And she said, like, I know that I am first with you. She said, every time you're home. And I did establish that early on that, our time is limited together, not only from a divorce, but also from me traveling. So I really wanted the quality time, but she looked at me, and this is the part that I have trouble getting through, but she looked at me and she said, I need you to understand the role model you are for me. You are showing me to have a dream and to go for it.
I love
Very
that.
sweet.
That right there. I was
Yeah.
like, here I am carrying so much guilt this whole time, not thinking about the other side, the benefit,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
strength, the independence, the have a dream, do it. If it fails, who cares? Keep going, try something different.
Yeah.
Like, so it's a very cool moment.
Well,
Yeah.
and kudos to you for having that moment of talking to her and then actually being
Yeah.
able to hear her voice because, you were living in a world where you were carrying that guilt, where she was living in a world where she's looking up to her badass mom thinking, wow, I'm
Yeah.
super inspired, right? Like, keep going, mom, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
And
that's
you were vulnerable too because she could have said, "I hate it and this I feel alone." And I mean, you're opening yourself up to you don't know what the answer is going to be, but now you get to see all the lessons that you've imparted on her. You get to see her living them because she's an adult, which is
Yeah.
amazing to watch.
Yes. Yes. And she's gone through some very hard things, things I would never wish on any human, and multiple things. And yet she just comes out on top, And I
Yeah.
remember one time she texted me and she said, Mom, I'm going through a lot of stuff. Okay, it said a different word there, but I'm going through a
you
lot of
say
stuff.
shit.
Yeah.
It's fine. We
Yeah.
Yeah.
can't comprehend.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. She said, I'm going through a lot of shit. She said, but I know I'll be stronger in the end. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is the mentality
Yeah.
I want. And I believe in vulnerability. Like last time I was home, with her home last month, we had a heart to heart about me moving. Like I said, I am still
Yeah.
having guilt, like, and carrying this, but I didn't say that until after she spoke because I didn't want her to adjust her response and answer based upon how I
Yeah.
was feeling, and she was very open and honest with me about it and how hard it was, but how we've,
Yeah.
she's worked through it, I've worked through it, and so just, intentionality. But if we are so afraid of, whether it's conflict or, the answer, then
Mhm.
yeah, but I think a lot of times we make it the answer harder than it's actually going to be. And if the answer
Yeah.
was for her to say, Mom, I hate it. Like, I
Yeah.
wish you were home. I would have adjusted for the next period of time. And it would 2 years, since she was 18.
Yeah.
I would have totally shifted my business and changed it or done something different until then. But that wasn't the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
But I could have just went ahead and said, "Well, I'm gonna stop traveling, I'm gonna do all this, change everything," not knowing because I didn't have the conversation. My point to
Right.
everybody is have the conversation. I know it's not easy and it's not comfortable, but try it.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is to not take it personal because even if she had said that, he said, "Well, you didn't have the things that you had. You know how many trips we've taken because of,"
Yeah.
but that would have been my guilt doing that,
Yep.
not this is the reality of where she feels and I feel, and maybe I wouldn't have adjusted anything. Like maybe it would have been a heart to heart of saying, "Okay, what what could be better? Like what do you miss or what do you wish we had?"
Yeah.
Right. But it's
Yeah.
that communication,
Yeah.
and I think that's so
Yes.
important.
It's not all or nothing, right? And I struggle with this. I'll be like, okay, well, I probably would have been okay, I guess I have to stop traveling then. You know what I mean? Like, but there's so many shades of gray in between there that you can figure out a different path.
Totally
So,
agree.
Carol, what are you most excited for? It could be your business. Once again, it could be something personal. You've got a lot on tap. You're doing some changes with your company, but what are you most excited for?
That's what I'm most excited about, this new change, because I feel like it's finally going to serve so many different individuals that I feel like I'm leaving this person out and leaving because you're supposed to niche for marketing.
yes.
But we're niching toward an avatar now. And it's not a specific gender or role or anything like that. It is going to be the Shine Studio and those that want to come in and work through on themselves that also then creates the Shine effect for others too. It'll help build personal and professional relationships. So yeah, I'm very, very excited.
And if people want to find you and learn more about what you're currently doing and where you're headed, how can they reach out?
Yeah, so igniteyoursshine.com. Obviously, it's going to get a transition here. You can opt in into our newsletter. I think it's at the very bottom right now, but opt in and we just send, tips and we share somebody who's doing a shine effect moment and just some value that we find with things that we throw in there. And it's twice a month currently. But yeah, the Ignite Your Shine. And then if you're on social media, I think pretty much almost everybody is these days, but I'm primarily on LinkedIn, LaVonna Roth. That's LaVonna and Roth ROTH. And then
Yeah.
so Instagram and LinkedIn is the same. And then Ignite Your Shine. So at Ignite Your Shine is also, you can follow there. However, on Instagram, because somebody has the at Ignite Your Shine and does not use it, has 0 posts. Doesn't matter. It is at Ignite Your
Yeah.
Shine now on Instagram.
Okay.
Don't you hate that? You're like, if you're not using this, can you just like delete your account?
Just
I
give
know
it
I even
up.
read Instagram and I'm like, I own the trademark to this. But they're like, we're not even using it. 0 posts. And they had 3 followers at the time. And the 3 followers, like I recognize the names because they're
They
not
probably
using
yeah, they probably set it up like God knows how long ago. Forgot they set it up. It's like
it.
my
Right.
Twitter account that I don't even remember that I have. So
Yes.
yeah, awesome. We will be following you
Yeah.
also. We'll be following your journey. I can't wait to see what comes next.
Yeah, I do
I
have
love
one
that.
more question. I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a really good one. If you have one piece of advice that you would like to share with our audience, it could be motherly advice, entrepreneurial advice. What would it be?
Gosh, I'd say the conversations is just valuable to me. Having the conversations like we talked about. I will say the best advice I've been given by my husband. that impacts me personally and professionally is just be you. So anytime I get nervous for whether it would be for an interview or whether it be to speak or to meet someone, because I am more introverted and I do have a very shy side to me that I've overcome a lot. So it only creeps up every now and then. But he would just say, just be you. And I was like, so yeah, I'm going to say that to everybody else. Just be you. Yep.
Yeah. I like it. Best
Thank
advice. He's smart, man.
Exactly.
Good
He is
man.
smart. True.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure getting to know you. And now that we know you're super close, we'll have to get together and have coffee, all of us.
Yes.
Yes. Let's do it. Let's do it. Wonderful. Thank you.